record. Hello, everybody. Today is Thursday, August 18, 2022. This is the SIG Network Kubernetes meeting. As usual, we are under the governance of our code of conduct, which distills down to be good people. We have a pretty thin agenda today, and I just got back from a vacation, so I haven't had a whole lot of time to catch up on what's been happening in the last 2 weeks. I apologize for all the PRs and issues and emails. Let's do some triage. Actually, there's nothing on the agenda other than triage as far as I can tell. So if people want to talk about stuff, now's your moment to throw it on the agenda while we do some triage. We have 15 issues for triage, although we've pre-triaged a few. Where did this window go? There we go. I will go ahead and share a window. Excellent. Everybody's got that? Yes. All right. Going from most recent to oldest, DNS does not work correctly. This seems like a misconfiguration issue. I asked for a little bit more information. It's pretty clearly not a Kubernetes bug. I should just close the tab. I signed it to myself. I'll try to help the person figure out their config issue. If anybody wants to jump in who's super familiar with the DNS side of things, they're also welcome to jump in. I'm certainly not going to be greedy. Network policy, host could not be resolved when adding network policy. It sounds, if I'm reading it correctly, that they have set up a service with no selector pointing to an external object, an external IP address, and then they're trying to use some selector here in a network policy, but there's no pod to select. Network policy is written in terms of pods, not in terms of services. So I've asked for follow-up. If that's the case, then we just have to close this, unless we want to consider handling this use case more elegantly. It seems pretty niche, but maybe.
Can you tag me in it? Oh, sorry.
No worries.
Or just give me the number. Thanks.
You got it. All right. I filed this one. I haven't read the updates to it, though. I realized as I was thinking through some other problem this week that if I create a load balancer, I get a node port automatically. If I access that node port on the load balancer's IP, it doesn't get blocked. And so it falls through into that last kube node ports chain, which doesn't check IPs, it only checks ports, because it kind of assumes that all the IP stuff has been handled before that. So
if you scroll down to my comment at the bottom, it actually only calls the node port chain for IPs that are recognized as being local IPs. And it should not be catching the load balancer IP. And I think that this is something that runs on GCE that's screwing up kube proxy.
So yes, at least on GCP, I thought it was on other platforms too. The load balancer IP is configured as a local address, because in the VM case, it would be a local address. You'd want to receive traffic on it, right? I don't know if the right answer is having kube proxy filter or trying to beat that out of the platform stack. I tried once to remove it. It was exceedingly difficult. Okay, I'll read the comments here, but I thought it was an interesting corner case. The slippery slope is we could end up with an equal number of rules in the filter chain as in the NAT chain, because we would have to recognize allowed IPs, which could perhaps argue for the mark drop to be a simpler model, which Dan just weeded out. At least then it's clear, like just add one rule at the end of that chain, right? Although it's not clear from the code point of view where to put that, because we iterate on ports, not on IPs. All right, I'll look at the updates there. I'm going to go ahead and triage accept this though, because it is a bug.
So the question is then, so one way of shortcutting all the rules is to create an IP in the in the host. With that, you are able to avoid these reject rules. I'm thinking if somebody wants to hack on this.
Sorry, can you explain? I didn't catch what you mean.
I'm thinking while I'm speaking. So the thing is, we depend on this local rule to reject, right? So every IP that is going to be present in the host is going to be able to avoid these rules. Can this be a problem from the security perspective? I mean, somebody can exploit this, but adding an IP to a host is a privileged operation, right?
That's right. It's a privileged operation, except when we do it on behalf of a service, which is not a privileged operation.
But we never add IPs to the node.
Well, on some platforms, I thought Amazon's NetLB worked the same way, but I could be wrong. And I thought OpenStack worked the same way. Any user who can create a kube service and set type load balancer will end up creating an IP on the local node, on every node.
But
it's not creating an interface, but it's assigning an address to the existing interface.
But this is okay. This is the process that runs in GCP.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
At least GCP. It's certainly GCP's problem. I think it's others too. So we could not do that. And then if Kubernetes nodes would be fine, but other GCE nodes would break. So we have to make it then a special part of the Kubernetes nodes.
I mean, it depends on the load balance implementation, I assume.
That's right.
I mean,
That's
yeah,
right.
so it's the VIP you need to hang somewhere.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I would presume that anything that acts like a VIP will have the same problem.
Yes.
Okay, moving on. I'll read the follow-ups here.
Okay. I know now who is going to be affected. All these people that use Keep Alive with external IPs.
Yeah.
Yes, external IPs would be subject to the same thing.
I mean, the question would be, should you move it over into a VRF? I haven't tried VRFs with the IP tables, but I mean, that would be one way. Just move it out of put it in its own little jail, so to speak, all the VIPs here.
Yeah, we'll have to follow up on this one. Issue filed anyway. This one is basically saying, hey, IPVS doesn't support node ports on local ports, which we know. They're asking for documentation, which is fair. I think the thing to document is IP tables mode supports it on node port, supports localhost node ports, and probably shouldn't have. And here's how you can disable it, right? There's a PR still open, I think, that disables it. So we should encourage people to disable that.
And maybe this ties into the load balancer node port thing too. Like maybe we need to start pushing people to say explicitly, these are the interfaces I want node ports to exist on, and then they would only exist on those IPs.
Yeah. Well, and also we have this allocate load balancer node port flag, which defaults to true for historical reasons, but like on GCP is not needed. If there was a way to set that as the default on GCP, then I wouldn't have filed this bug because I would have tested and said, oh, it doesn't work. So we have a bunch of like evolved things that we can't change the defaults on, or we haven't changed the defaults on. We should think about that. I have actually literally a note on my whiteboard on my desk here, which is to think about a core v2 proposal where we could bake in some of these default changes. It's not just service, but there's a bunch of things that would be nice to change the defaults towards more secure defaults. I don't know if it'll ever go anywhere, but something to think about.
Big plus one on changing the default, especially when the default is like basically a load bearing fog. And as long as we make it very clear and, give people a path, I think that would be really nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Maybe we should open another issue. I'll take a note. At least on GKE, I should be able to get them to change some service flags, change kube proxy flags to make some of these defaults saner, right? Like maybe we should add a kube proxy flag that is, no, never mind. I gotta think it through. It feels like I should be able to change this default for GCP somewhere, because we know we don't need node ports for load balancers. Okay. That was this one. So, sorry, Antonio, were you going to write the docs, or was somebody? Why did I think it was you who signed up for this? Oh, yeah,
No.
You touched it. Now it's yours.
Okay.
No, it would be great if somebody volunteers to write some documentation on this. I'm just going to go ahead and triage accept it because it's real.
The problem with the docs is that the round trip is horrible. I mean, it's getting the bike shed in there. Every time that we want to modify a flag is.
Yes, I
So
agree that it's more painful than it needs to be, and it's not even really clear where this documentation should go.
That's why I asked the user, and he pointed 3 places. So I expected him to follow up.
Yeah, I mean, if we just made it in the comments around kube proxy, like the references get regenerated, don't they, periodically, every release? I thought they do. I would not put it in API docs. I would perhaps put it in this one.
That's the problem we have with the different modes of kube proxy. I mean,
yes, I agree.
And we never fixed that. I think that the root cause is that we have 2 proxies that are different.
Yeah, we're serving multiple things from one binary.
Yeah.
All right. I also filed this bug. I haven't read any of the follow-ups on it yet. But as I was looking at the changes around service controller, I realized it's not clear what the being deleted state means. In fact, this is why I went off and wrote a doc in the community repo on controllers and this intermediate state, because we have a real bug. So I'm going to go ahead and triage. Oops. Accept.
Yeah, but this intersects with a lot of things, with the pod lifecycle, with the node lifecycle, and
Yes.
what I'm afraid is that we start to implement different behaviors in different places. So, for example, the scheduler, I know that there are other controllers. I don't know if the scheduler or who is handling these things differently, or at least.
Sorry, chat. Bowie, which doc do you mean?
Oh, the doc that you wrote for community. Is it linked in this issue? I don't see it.
No, it's not. That's a good point. I'll find it. I tweeted about it this week too. You can find it on my Twitter. It's really short. It's just like there exists a third state between does not exist and exists, which is going to not exist. Right. There we go.
Put it in the chat.
Thank you. Anyway, I come to realize that basically any controller that doesn't explicitly have something documented about deletion timestamp is probably wrong, because all the ones I've looked at so far are.
Yeah, but this is the thing. Alessandro commented. So we have this thing on endpoints. So the endpoints handle the terminating step. The problem is we had a bug in the endpoint slice controller because the node wasn't present, but the pod was present. So we have 1, 2, 3 controllers that depends on their behavior, and the 3 of them manage them differently. We have the pod, we have the node, and we have the endpoints. Pod, not endpoints, with the garbage collector and all these things that depend. And we don't have a consistency between them.
Yes, I mean, each resource probably needs to define what does it mean when it's being deleted and how controllers should treat that. Maybe the right answer is it's not a per controller decision, it's a per resource decision.
Yeah, that's the thing is, if I delete a node and it's been deleted, do I delete the endpoints for the pod there? Because the pods are waiting for the recycle. I don't know if you see where I'm going.
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying. I'm trying to figure out if there's a
Okay.
more
I just
consistent
wanted.
answer.
Yeah, that's the thing is we have these cross states between different objects.
Yeah, I mean, this came up on Slack this week too with someone who was asking about why their service was experiencing connection reset errors while they were doing upgrades. They thought, well, I set a graceful termination period, and when I receive a SIG term, I call http.shutdown. And why isn't Kubernetes doing the right thing? Shouldn't all the traffic have been drained before I get the SIG term? And I had to explain, like, no, actually, that's not at all how it works. Don't do the shutdown, because everything is asynchronous to everything else. And there's no check-in after all the load balancers are configured, right? It's just like wall time oriented. And it's unsatisfactory, but here are the reasons. This goes right to the same topic of like end of life for all these things isn't clear.
Yeah.
Tim, do you have that written down somewhere?
I posted it on Slack. I could write it.
Okay, yeah, if it's somewhere in Slack, that would be great. We had some confusion over on our side regarding that behavior.
Okay. Yeah, the truth is I should probably write a blog post or something, because there's enough there that it's probably useful for people to know about. All right, I took a note to see if I can grab that and post it somewhere. But it is on Slack. I think it was in SIG apps, the discussion. Okay, so I'm going to leave this open. Now we've gotten to the point where I've not pre-triaged. Long-held TCP connection gets destroyed randomly from contract. It's a really nice long bug report here with lots of details. Does somebody want to look at it and see if they can verify that it is in fact an issue? Whether or not we're going to fix it doesn't matter, but just to analyze the report. Volunteers? Anybody?
I was checking it. Yes.
Well, I mean, the first thing would be to ask for more information, right? What is the kernel? What is the versions of everything?
Yeah. What are the configuration of the various
Yeah.
net filter configs?
Did they mention the Kubernetes version at all? Because we did fix a bug like this ages ago.
I don't think they mentioned the Kubernetes. There we go. 22.
Okay. Yeah.
Anybody wants to ask the right questions?
Yeah, add me to that. All these content things. Here you are.
Okay, next. Kube proxy should report events when proxy or failovers. What is a proxy or failover? Oh, sorry, I did look at this one. This was the when they ask it for IPVS and it falls back on IP tables or something like that.
That's Dan Winship has the fix for that.
Yeah, I submitted a PR to get rid of that.
Okay, awesome, cool. So I guess there's the bigger question though of should we send events more readily for stuff? There's this other discussion that you were on, Antonio, about sending events for node port collisions. Like, it's dangerous whenever we send events from kubeproxy, right? Because we can easily flood the system.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think that events on the reconcile loop are dangerous because, I mean, that means one per node and per cycle. But we don't send events. I think that I grep and we only send one event, and I don't remember why. But I find that users look at the events. I mean,
I think the users do look at events. They don't look at logs.
Yeah, that's my point. So, and I think that some of the bugs and the things that we have should be easier to resolve if we use.
But the problem with events is they age out relatively quickly compared to the time frame that people tend to detect things in. So like if we send an event at startup that says, oh no, you asked for IPVS, but I couldn't do IPVS, so I gave you IP tables instead. And 2 hours later, that event goes away. Will anybody have seen it? Right?
But
There isn't a place to decorate permanently. Like you guys remember way back, there was this component statuses API that we were trying to like add a like, hey, kube proxy component status. You can go and note that something is abnormal about kube proxy. And it turned out it was bad for a lot of reasons, not the least of which is I could have thousands of kube proxies. Am I going to have thousands of component statuses, right?
yeah, but I mean, the event will keep. So the kube proxy that fails to boot or something will keep sending the event.
But if it doesn't fail to boot, like if you fall back, I know we're going to get rid of the fallback. I agree with that. But if we fall back from, if we do something the one time at startup, oh no, I've noticed I can't configure this particular sysctl, throw an event, right? And then nobody ever sees it, like, was it worthwhile? Or are we going to set up a timer that repeatedly throws that event, and then we're back to the, the thundering herd problem?
Well, that's for sure. My experience is this: is when you log, is for something that knows where to look at. I mean, you go to kube proxy because you know, I don't know, something is happening. But when you want to get the first impression of what is going on, the first thing you look at the events. So that's for me the rule that we should follow. I mean, when we want to point the people, to give them a starting point, they are not going to look at all the kube proxy logs.
No, but like again, looking at failover, like it's going to work, right? We'll just have switched. We won't have given you what you asked for, but it's actually going to work pretty much okay until you hit some weird corner case that is different between IPVS and IP tables, right? And only then will you notice that you didn't get what you wanted. And you can make one argument, I guess, that if it worked, why would we bother telling people? But if that was true, why did we bother implementing IPVS, right? Like, it's there for a reason, right? And if they're not getting what they wanted, there should be a way to tell them. But we know that nobody looks at the logs, and especially nobody looks at the logs when things aren't on fire.
Yeah, that's why I think the event is good. It's like a breadcrumb. I mean, just if it works only for the 5% of the users that look at the event, it's worth.
I agree with you. It's interesting. I mean, it's better than nothing. And in fact, I know some people take all the events and archive them, right? So they can go back and look at them later. So it's better than nothing. So I'm not against it. It feels like it's an incomplete solution, a very incomplete solution.
Yeah, and I agree with that. But it's better than logs. I mean, and we have these tarballs with 10 gigas of logs.
I mean, I wonder if like rebooting something like component status into something that was learn the lessons from it and make it something more reasonable would actually make sense.
I mean, what you're talking about, it's either something like status, right, or alarm that has to be cleared. But I mean, that also becomes very tedious when you have a lot of them.
Yes, yeah. If I have 1,000 nodes in my cluster and I get 1,000 alarms, I'm going to be on one unhappy sysadmin.
Well, if it's the same alarm, they should be clobbered together, right? As one cause, and then I mean, it's
great. Somebody go write a cap. I'm seriously, like, I like the idea. I feel like being able to have arbitrary things that are running in or around or for your cluster to notify you of permanent, non-transient, non-fatal errors would be useful. All right, we'll move on. This is not the topic here. So this is going to get fixed. Close it. How was the time? Well, we're halfway in. Is there more on the agenda? Nobody's put anything else on the agenda? All right, we can keep going then. For dual stack deployments, node addresses show only one IP if node IP parameter is passed. Didn't we look at this one last time? Yes, we did.
I don't know what happened here, but this.
Oh, yeah, I don't know if we did look at this. So this is possibly, I made a comment, it's possibly an API break, we might decide. Basically, Node IP was always useless when you were using an external cloud provider. And so somebody changed it to make it useful. And it turns out that this breaks people who were using it for its side effects.
Is this related to the PR when they added the annotation? Because I lost track. This Node IP external provider changed recently during the last year. So when you did modify this last time, it was everything okay, right? I'm talking to Dan Winch. You're on mute, or I'm not hearing anything.
I didn't modify the handling of external cloud provider stuff.
Yeah, no, I don't know. The thing is, the kubelet node IP addresses were through a long refactor, and you and Andy Syken were modifying, and it was fine, working fine during 1 or 2 releases.
Yes.
But suddenly we are starting to have all these things, and I saw some patches from the cloud provider people to add an annotation and handle some migration on everything.
For 1.24, they changed the behavior of Node IP with external cloud providers. It used to be
okay.
I don't know what they've done, if they're doing anything in like since then. I guess that was 125, not 124. But
and that was what changed the behavior.
Yes.
Okay. No, I was trying to go back in the history, and I didn't see any change. So that's why I was. This feature was stable for a long time.
Okay, there's a lot of history here that I haven't read. Like, is it a break? Is it something we need to roll back on?
If you were using a command line flag which didn't work in the way it was documented to work, so that you could get a side effect that wasn't documented, then now it does something different.
Oh.
So
yeah.
using undefined behavior is always undefined, right?
Well, Hiram's law, right? Like at some point, if it's part of your API behavioral surface, it's part of, sorry, if it's part of your behavioral surface, it's part of your API.
Yes. But if it's not documented, then yeah, you can break things, but it's still not.
Yeah, like we never promised this glitch would never be fixed. But we still are going to have to bear responsibility for how sad people are when it is.
Yeah. Okay.
I think
go ahead.
The thing is, when I saw the change last time that they were implemented with the annotation, it just was one thing that looked at, that something was going to go wrong. Because I remember Andrew and Dan discussing on the Node IPs, and it took a lot of time to have this behavior stable. So I will try to find the PR. And
okay, I'll give this a read.
The history.
I'll give this a read later today. But Dan, I'm going to tag you as maybe a proposal maker. Like, do we fix it? Do we not fix it? Can I stick you with that responsibility?
After you've read it and weighed in on if it seems like I don't have a sense of, like I said, it's really an edge case. Like if you go with the thing that we can never change behavior, then it is an API break. But it's an API break in using a feature that wasn't working the way that it was supposed to, so that you can get a side effect that wasn't documented.
Yeah, I mean, this makes me think about the topology behavior of like, should we turn topology on by default? Oh, well, what if it breaks somebody? Oh, well, then everything we do has to become opt-in and you can never change existing behavior. Makes for a really horrible mess over time.
So in this case, we could revert it back to how it used to be, deprecate the node IP flag and add a new node IPs flag that has better semantics, and then move forward that way. We just lose the better functionality in 1.25 that whoever MD Booth, I think, had added.
Okay. I mean, what you just described was where I was going in my brain too. Let me have a read over today, and I'll weigh in. All right.
I found
We're
it,
now.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, wasn't that that was linked in here somewhere? Too many windows. I saw that number in here. Yeah, you linked it in the issue.
Ah, okay, I didn't remember.
All right, API server crash. This is the dual stack service versus advertise address.
Yeah, I don't understand. Why do you want to change this?
Well, what we're doing now is pretty wrong, right?
No, I mean,
Well, I mean, aside from the fact that it panics, if they've set up an advertise address and a service address, and those two things are in conflict, what should we do?
the problem is that by definition, the cluster is not going to work because it's not the Kubernetes.default service is not going to work. So everything that use in cluster configuration, that are all the pods, controllers, and everything, are going to fail. But they are not going to fail as they fail as connection timeout.
Right.
So you have a cluster that has the API server working, QCTR works, and all your controllers are failing with connection timeout. So that is a lot of issues that are going to be open against the networking team who is managing the cluster.
Right.
The networking team will take hours until it finds out that the problem is that the service has an endpoint in a different family.
Yeah, this is a super subtle bug, right?
That's why, I mean, Dan Wilsip and I had a lot of these issues.
Okay, so the question I was asking was, should we try to figure out what the user actually meant and use the secondary family, or should we just say, whoa, you specified two things that don't make sense together?
There's no way to make Kubernetes.default use the secondary API family with the current code. Like it won't work.
Okay.
I have the traces of the code there. So the problem is that part of the API server, that bootstrap, is better to not, I mean, touch it and make
better to just say you've set this up wrong.
No,
okay.
no. Yeah, that's
I mean,
the
that's
point.
That's what we're saying here, right?
Right. Until then, when she fixes it with the dual stack API server endpoints, that then we can do whatever we want.
Okay, so I'm going to mark this as triage accepted, and I'm going to mark it help wanted. It seems like a relatively low-hanging fruit if somebody wants to jump on it, right?
It has a cap. I don't know if it's missing for something.
Well, but I mean, aside from the cap, like simply adding some validation that just says your advertise address and your primary service address don't match, that's not allowed. Like, I could even argue this should be a bug fix in 25.
The problem is that, okay, let me think. I need more time.
I mean, tell me if you think I'm wrong. It seems like it should be a simple fix. At least in this case, it won't panic. It will just fail with at least a useful error message.
Because those values are derived. Well, I don't remember. I had to check, but the problem is that how the API server builds the configuration goes through different stages and has different API servers one on top of that. So the options are being derived, and I don't know at what point you have that information. So I just say when I type cube API server boot whatever, failed there.
Oh,
no. So what would happen if you only gave a v6, no v4, and still have the public v4? It would not run, right? No, it's like right now it's like, oh, it's an order of yes, for dual stack. But if you try to make a v6 system, but you give the public IP as a v4, that shouldn't work either, right?
Yeah, that won't work.
So I mean, what it says that you need to have a match between your
That's
public
right.
IPs and the first, and so that would then be a bug.
Right. I mean, the code snippet here is exactly it, right?
Yeah.
So it looks like we do report it somewhere, but then later we crash. So we should probably report it earlier and just say, I'm not even going to try to spin up the controller.
Yeah. So I mean, the description is a little wrong. The problem is not that it has a v4 public IP. The problem is that it doesn't have a v6. Right. I mean,
No, the problem is if it doesn't match.
Yeah, you
exactly.
have two flags that don't match.
Yeah, exactly. It is a v6
Right.
address.
Yeah,
Okay.
right. Well, one of these two has to change. Either they flip the services around or they change the advertised address. That's the issue, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to throw a quick. Oops. All right. We're working on these PRs and KEPs still. Thank you for all the excellent work on this. I was out last week and this week has been crazy, but I have them all open and I will look at them ASAP.
Yeah, I guess whenever the KEP cycle opens for 126 is fine. It was more for the cherry pick on 124 that I would be more interested in, so to speak.
Yes. Man, that cherry pick makes me anxious.
Yeah, I knew you would say that.
If I was the branch manager, I don't know that I would buy it.
Yeah. The thing is, even for I didn't really know how that works. Like, does the branch manager wait for your LGTM approve, or do they actually take a look at the PR and try?
They probably will take a look at the PR. They should. What I'm afraid of is sometimes, like if I say, hey, approve this, then they will, even if they don't think it's the right idea. And I don't want to be in the position of telling the branch managers to take risks that they're not comfortable taking, because it's them that's on the line, not me. Right.
Sure.
So maybe we should have I haven't looked at the cherry pick PR, but maybe we should just actually like loop them into a conversation and say, this is the risk, this is the bug. Like, do you think that the risk is commensurate to the bug?
Yeah.
Or do we just tell users you have to wait for 25, which, practically speaking, in managed providers won't land until Q1, right?
Yeah. That's kind of what my company's facing. I mean, the problem. In any case, so I guess we can have a discussion after this meeting offline somewhere, maybe with the branch. But this issue I created in any case to like track the work. So both the PR that went in on 125, but also the KEP for 126 and future improvements that we'll make.
Yeah, and I want to say thanks. Like, this was sort of a weird and ugly old controller. It is a much nicer piece of code now after all these changes. It makes a lot more sense. And once we get all the pieces lined up, I think it'll be much better than it was. Okay, moving backwards in time, we have common polylators, polylator, and casting.
This is for you.
Was this me?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's assigned to me. How about that?
I don't know what they are doing.
Oh, they did respond. Okay. All right, then I'll look at it. Sorry. All right, worker nodes are not showing external DNS address. Okay. I don't think there's a fix here, right? Goodbye. It's the resolution is cited. This is not a guaranteed API. And then Cal's thing, which I don't even remember why we left this open. Oh yeah.
When is Car coming back, Bridget? The man come. He's lost. He was in Spain last time that I checked.
Yeah, I've been watching him just on Twitter as he's globe trotting around, sending tweets from all over the place. How rude would it be for him to be in Spain and not drop in on you, Antonio?
I told him, but I mean, I'm in
Sorry,
one
had to mute the
corner of-
other. Sorry, I had to mute the other call. Cal will be back this fall, so we will get to enjoy his presence on these calls again soon.
All right, I'm going to stop my share now. We still don't have anything else on the agenda, so rather than waste more time, as much as I enjoy all of y'all's company, I'm sure you can do something more useful with the last 13 or so minutes. So last chance, anybody has anything they want to talk about? Okay, we're about to open the KEP window again for 26. We have a lot of open KEPs that and more incoming. So we're going to need to pay close attention and maybe do some prioritization about which ones we're going to spend our energy on. I personally, I like to, in between the code freeze and the KEP window opening, so like that, several weeks period, I like to try to find tech debt issues, long-standing little ugly things that I can spend some time on. So I will encourage anybody who finds themselves with a few free minutes, go peek at one of the code bases that we own and see if there's not some nasty little work that you can pay down and close one of these old issues, documenting some weird behavior or helping fix a flag or whatever. We have plenty of debt. If you have trouble finding some, let me know. I'll be happy to help you. We need more docs, yes, and the docs that we have are not always coherent. I was looking at recently this debug services doc, which I link people to all the time. It could use a refresh to cover a lot of the newer stuff, especially like the traffic policy fields. So there's plenty of debt to do.
There is one pull request from Tim Bannister from documentation to update the services. I don't know if he merged it or not, but that's he will need some help with that. I will try to find it because he wanted to refactor all this documentation and he has a PR and I don't remember. I reviewed it before the previous QCOM, but it was really nice. Let me annotate this and share.
So I was asking someone this week if we have a label that sort of indicates tech debt, right? And the answer is no, we don't. But we can probably assume that the combination of priority backlog, or maybe just priority backlog, is the closest we have to this. So, if people are filing sort of tech debt issues that are in the we'd like to fix this one day, but it's not super important, priority backlog and or help wanted is a good way to go. And maybe lifecycle frozen at the same time. There's no reason to age out tech debt, really. Okay, everybody gets 10 minutes back. Thanks all for your time. We will see you in 2 weeks. Don't forget, KubeCon is coming up shockingly fast. See you soon.
Bye.